Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into it, setting sail into Herman Melville's world, specifically chapters 23 through 36 of Moby Dick.
Right. And our mission, if you will, isn't just to follow the story, the hunt.
No, we want to go deeper. We're looking at whaling itself, the job, the profession, and the people, this incredible cast of characters Melville gives us.
Exactly. And our main source, obviously, is Melville's text itself. Those amazing narrative bits, but also the really descriptive, almost essay-like sections.
And right off the bat, there's this tension, isn't there? Melville flags it himself, how whaling was often seen as, what did he call it?
A rather unpoetical and disreputable pursuit. His words.
Yeah, but then he spends these chapters pushing back hard against that very idea.
He really does. It's like he's building a case, trying to show its reality, its historical importance, challenging us, the readers on land.
Okay, so let's dive in. Chapter 23, The Lee Shore. We meet Bulkington.
Ah, Bulkington. Quite the character intro. He's just finished this epic 4-year voyage.
4 years. And he basically steps off one ship and onto another.
Pretty much immediately heads back out to sea. It seems crazy at first.
But Melville uses him for something bigger, right? A metaphor.
Absolutely. The land, which you'd think is safety, becomes this dangerous lee shore.
A lee shore, meaning something you crash against if you're not careful.
Exactly. A danger zone, especially for anyone involved in deep, serious thinking. The open sea, though, that represents independence, truth, maybe.
So staying on land, sticking to safe ideas, that's the real danger for the thinker.
That's the idea. And Bulkington, by choosing the sea, is choosing that constant inquiry, rejecting easy comfort.
Melville even suggests that dying at sea, like Bulkington presumably does later, is somehow better than staying on the slavish shore.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical valuing of the difficult path, the unknown. Makes you think about what it costs to really pursue truth.
Which leads nicely into chapter 24, The Advocate. Here, Melville really goes to bat for whaling.
Oh, absolutely. You can feel the narrator, Ishmael, wanting to convince us landsmen that the bad reputation is unfair. He's passionate about it.
So how does he argue against it being unpoetical or unreputable?
Well, he uses these great comparisons. He says, okay, whalemen are butchers, fine.
Acknowledges the dirty work.
Right. But then he says, so are martial commanders, generals, and we heap honors on them. Why the double standard?
That's a sharp point. And then the cleanliness argument. That surprised me. Whale ships being among the cleanliest things.
I don't know. It
Yeah.
sounds wild. But he's contrasting the, let's say, organic mess of whaling, which served a purpose providing oil for light, etc., with the deliberate human carnage of a battlefield.
Ah, okay. It's a different kind of uncleanliness.
Exactly. And then there's that powerful idea of the unconscious tribute paid to whalers every time someone lights a lamp using whale oil. It connects this dangerous remote work to everyday life across the globe.
And he doesn't just stop at poetic arguments. He brings in history and economics. This part was, frankly, mind-blowing.
It really was. The scale he talks about. Dutch whaling admirals, French kings like Louis VI fitting out ships, British government bounties.
But the American dominance he describes is huge. The number of ships, the men, the capital involved.
Massive. He makes it clear this wasn't some fringe activity. It was a major global industry, a huge economic driver, especially for America at that time.
And more than just money, he positions whaling as this engine of exploration.
Totally. He claims whalers were charting unknown waters and finding islands before famous explorers like Cook or Vancouver.
So they were accidental pioneers?
In a way, yes. He argues they opened trade routes, helped liberate South American countries, even acted as the true mother of Australia by providing early support.
Wow. The whale ship as the mother of Australia. That's a statement.
It really sticks with you. He's basically saying their relentless pursuit of whales had these massive unintended geopolitical consequences. They even potentially opened up Polynesia and Japan.
It reframes the whole profession. It wasn't just hunting, it was shaping the world map.
And then he elevates it further by linking it to, like, literary and historical heavyweights.
Right, like calling Job the first author on the Leviathan.
And Alfred the Great recording a whaling voyage, Edmund Burke praising whalers in Parliament. It's all about building this sense of historical dignity.
Even bringing in Benjamin Franklin's grandmother, Mary Morrell Folger.
Yeah, connecting her to harpooneers. It makes this grand history feel, well, human, relatable.
And declaring the whale a royal fish in Old English law, showing whale bones in a Roman triumph.
He pulls out all the stops, even Cetus, the whale constellation. He's arguing that the scale of the hunt, taking hundreds of whales, rivals conquering cities, it's about dignity.
And you really feel the narrator's personal stake when he says his time on a whale ship was his Yale College and my Harvard.
Absolutely. It's his education, his forging ground. Melville sees profound value in that raw experience.
Then chapter 25, the postscript. It feels like a little coda, almost a joke, but not quite.
It is a bit playful. This speculation that the oil used to anoint kings and queens might actually be sperm oil.
The sweetest of all oils.
Right. So even in the most sacred royal ceremonies, there's this hidden contribution from these supposedly disreputable whalemen. A nice, ironic touch.
Underscores their hidden influence again. Okay, then we start meeting the crew properly in chapter 26, Knights and Squires. First up, Starbuck.
Ah, Starbuck.
Yeah.
He's presented as the chief mate, a Nantucketer, a Quaker. Very serious.
Yeah, described as earnest, enduring, conscientious, but also superstitious.
Right. Melville suggests the sea fosters that, and he carries scars. His father and brother died whaling. That shapes him.
And his view on courage is really interesting, not just being fearless.
No, he thinks true courage comes from properly understanding the danger you're facing. A completely fearless man, he thinks, is actually more dangerous than a coward.
Because they're reckless.
Precisely. It's about measured bravery, not blind pushing. But Melville also hints Starbuck has this inner vulnerability, these spiritual terrors that might break him. It sets up potential conflict down the line.
Still, Melville holds him up as an ideal of manliness, right? Dignity through work, not status.
Exactly, that whole spirit of equality idea. He mentions Bunyan, Cervantes, Andrew Jackson, people from humble backgrounds who achieved greatness. Starbuck fits that mold.
Then chapter 27 introduces the other mates, Stubb and Flask. Quite different from Starbuck.
Oh, totally. Stubb, the second mate from Cape Cod, he's described as happy-go-lucky, just indifferent to peril, always calm, always smoking his pipe.
That pipe seems important, like maybe it's how he copes.
Could be. Melville hints it might be a defense against the nameless miseries of life at sea, just puffing away the fear.
And then Flasks, the third mate from Martha's Vineyard.
Flask is something else. Aggressive towards whales, no reverence at all, sees this giant creature as just a big mouse or a water rat.
He sounds almost disrespectful. Is that the right word?
Completely. His courage seems born from sheer lack of imagination or respect for the whale's power. Melville calls him king post, like a short, stubborn piece of timber. Fits him perfectly.
So these three, Starbuck, Stubb, Flask, they're the commanders of the whaleboats. Momentous men, Melville calls them.
Right. And then we meet their harpooneers, their squires. Queequeg, who we know, is Starbuck's.
Tashtego is Stubbs. He's described as a gay-head Indian.
Yes, and Melville gives this incredible description, linking his skill back to his ancestors, the hunters and warriors. Almost mystical.
And Daggoo, Flask's harpooneer.
Yeah.
He's portrayed as gigantic.
Huge. A coal-black Negro savage described with impressive physical presence, down to his large gold hoop earrings.
It's such a diverse group, and Melville notes many aren't American-born, especially the islanders, the isolados.
Yeah, he calls them the best whalemen, living on their own separate continent. It really emphasizes the microcosm of the world aboard the Pequod.
And then, chapter 28, Ahab, the captain, finally appears.
After days of just being this unseen force issuing orders, his entrance is incredibly dramatic.
That description, cut away from the stake, the bronze look, that livid white scar.
Unforgettable. And we don't know how he got the scar, adding to mystery. Then, of course, the leg.
The ivory leg.
Uh-huh.
Made from a sperm whale's jawbone. A constant reminder of something lost at sea.
And the way he stands, braced by that leg in a hole drilled into the deck, gripping the ship's rigging, staring forward, it just screams determination, willpower.
You immediately feel his impact on the crew, that uneasy consciousness.
Definitely. Melville talks about the look of crucifixion on his face, but also this regal, overbearing dignity. He's clearly carrying some immense burden, some mighty woe.
Chapter 29, enter Ahab, to him Stubb. Our first real interaction. And it's tense.
Very. It's nice weather, the Quito spring, but Ahab's piecing the deck at night. Stubb, trying to be helpful maybe, suggests muffling the sound of the ivory leg.
And Ahab just rips into him, calls him a dog.
Yeah, the response is incredibly harsh, scornful, shows Ahab's volatility and absolute authority.
Poor Stubb is left speechless
Mm-hmm.
and muttering about Ahab being crazy, wondering what's eating at him.
Right. He even mentions hearing Ahab groan in his sleep. Stubb doesn't know whether to confront him or pray for him. He ends up just deciding to stash it, to deal with it later. It shows how intimidating Ahab is.
Chapter 30, The Pipe. A short but very symbolic scene.
Ahab alone, leaning over the side, calls for his ivory stool and his pipe.
That stool, Melville connects it to Norse kings' thrones made of narwhal tusks, Ahab as king of the sea.
Right, but then he tries to smoke and realizes the pipe brings him no comfort anymore. It represents peace, serenity, things he's rejected.
So he just throws it, still lit, into the ocean.
I'll smoke no more. A really powerful gesture. It's like he's severing his last tie to normalcy, fully embracing his obsession.
Then chapter 31, Queen Mab. This is where Stubb tells Flask about that incredibly weird dream.
Oh, that dream is fantastic. Ahab kicking him with the ivory leg, Stubb's own leg coming off, Ahab turning into a pyramid.
And the merman telling him the kick was an honor. It's so bizarre.
Totally surreal. It's clearly Stubb's subconscious wrestling with Ahab's power and the whole strange vibe on the ship.
Flask just thinks it's sort of foolish, naturally.
Yeah, Flask isn't one for deep interpretation, but Stubb insists the dream made him wise and tells Flask to just leave Ahab alone.
And right after this weird dream talk, Ahab shouts from the deck.
Boom. Back to reality. Whales sighted. And significantly, Ahab specifically asks about a white one.
The first mention, or reinforcing it.
It reinforces this laser focus, and Stubb mutters, Ahab has that. That's bloody on his mind. We know something specific and intense is driving him.
Which brings us, surprisingly maybe, to chapter 32, Cetology, the science of whales.
Yeah, it's like Melville hits pause on the action and says, okay, let's talk whales. He acknowledges it's a confusing field, lists all these old authorities, points out their flaws.
He notes most of them never even saw a living whale. Only Scoresby really knew his stuff, and mostly just about Greenland whales.
Right. And then Melville makes this big claim. The sperm whale is the new king, deposing the Greenland whale, and he points out how little has actually been written about the living sperm whale.
It kind of emphasizes the mystery surrounding their main target, doesn't it?
It does. It shows how much these whalemen were dealing with the unknown, scientifically speaking, and then he offers his own classification system.
A folio octavo duodecimo system, based on size, like book formats.
Yeah, he argues it's the only practical way since features like fins or teeth are too inconsistent across species. He gives descriptions for each category.
It's incredibly detailed, but he admits it's incomplete, right? Like the cloned cathedral.
Exactly. He's humble about it, acknowledging the limits of human knowledge when facing the vastness of nature. It's a fascinating chapter showing Melville's own deep research and maybe his obsessive tendencies too.
It really grounds the fantastical hunt in some kind of scientific reality, even if it's his reality. Okay, chapter 33, The Speck-Snider.
This chapter explains the role of the chief harpooneer, a unique position in whaling.
Apparently, back in the old Dutch days, the Speck-Snider basically shared command with the captain, at least concerning the hunt itself.
Yeah, a figure of huge importance. That role got reduced a bit in the British fishery, but in the American tradition, the harpooneers were still key officers, even commanding the deck sometimes.
And they lived aft with the officers, even if they were socially sort of equal to the crew.
Right. Melville uses this to talk about discipline and hierarchy. He notes whaling ships could be less rigid than merchant ships because of shared profits and dangers, but the formal distinctions were usually kept.
How does this relate back to Ahab?
Well, Melville says Ahab demands total obedience, but doesn't rely on just shallow displays of rank. He respects the sea's traditions and uses that established structure, perhaps, to enforce his own will.
Like using the existing hierarchy for his own purposes.
Exactly. But then Melville pulls back again, reminding us Ahab is still just a poor old whale hunter. His real grandeur isn't about rank or ceremony. It's something internal, something immense and intangible.
Chapter 34, The Cabin Table. This paints such a vivid picture of life on board. The meals.
Oh, the meal scenes are great. So much social commentary packed in there. First, the officers' dinner.
The strict order they enter. Ahab, then Starbuck, Stubb, and finally Flask.
And the silence. Ahab presides like a mute king. Everyone's watching him, barely speaking. It's incredibly tense and formal.
And Flask's situation is almost comical. Last in, first out, gets the scraps, no butter.
It perfectly illustrates the pecking order. His constant hunger is this running gag about his low rank among the officers.
But then the harpooneers come down.
And it's a total shift. Frantic democracy, Melville calls it. They just dive in, loud, boisterous, totally unrestrained.
Poor doughboy, the steward, is terrified of them. Tashtego throwing his fork, Daggoo threatening him.
It's chaos compared to the officer's stiff meal. You see Queequeg's filed teeth, Daggoo's sighs making the cabin shake. They're described almost like noble savages feasting.
Such a contrast. Constraint versus relish.
And it reinforces Ahab's isolation. The cabin is his space. Everyone else, even the officers, are just visitors. He's described as this alien, feeding on his own gloom.
Really paints a picture of his profound separateness. Okay, chapter 35, the masthead, standing watch.
Yeah, Melville takes this routine duty and really explores it. He points out it's something American whalemen did constantly, for years on end, cumulatively.
He even throws in historical examples, Egyptians using pyramids, Saint stylites on his pillar.
Right, contrasting those with modern statues. And he mentions early shore-based lookouts on Nantucket.
But the focus is the experience at sea. Up there, 2 hours at a time, sunrise to sunset.
He describes how it can be pleasant, almost meditative in the tropics, high above everything, just the sea, the sky, the occasional whale spout, an escape from the ship's routine.
A kind of sublime uneventfulness, cut off from the world.
But it wasn't comfortable. He emphasizes the precarious perch on the crosstrees. No real support.
And he sounds almost envious of the Greenland whalers' crow's nests.
Oh, yeah. Those enclosed shelters sound luxurious in comparison. He gives this detailed description of Sleet's crow's nest, complete with a stove and rifle rack. Clearly a step up.
So looking back at this whole section, chapters 23 to 35,
Yeah.
what are the big takeaways for you?
Well, you get this incredibly rich picture of whaling, not just the hunt, but the profession's history, its economics, its dangers, and Melville's passionate defense of its inherent dignity.
And we meet the key players. Starbuck's conscience, Stubb's ease, Flask's pugnacity, the powerful harpooneers.
Exactly. The human element comes alive. And hovering over it all is Ahab, his dramatic entrance, his intensity, his mysterious purpose. It all starts to build.
What stands out to me is that constant swing between the practical, dirty work of whaling and these really deep philosophical moments it seems to inspire.
That's classic Melville, isn't it? The specific task opens up universal questions. You see the seeds of the major conflicts being sown: man versus nature, fate versus free will, the nature of obsession.
He's definitely setting the stage for something huge, far more than just a sea story.
Absolutely. The Pequod feels like a world in itself, heading towards Moby Dick and whatever that represents.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on as we pause here. Thinking back to Bulkington, chapter 23, what is that mortally intolerable truth that drives someone to constantly choose the dangerous, uncertain sea over the slavish shore?
And how does that relentless drive, that rejection of comfort, maybe connect with what we're starting to see in Captain Ahab? Something profound, maybe something destructive, is definitely brewing.
Lots to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.